have three incredible experts today to talk to us about how to unlock larger donations at end of year with tax advantage gifts. A couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. One, this is approved for 1.0 CFRE credits. At the end of this session, please make a note. We will confirm your attendance. As usual, pardon me, there's no sort of official certificate you get for coming today. This is enough, but we'll back you up if you ever need it. So we'll do some very quick intros, and then we'll go from there. So my name is Patrick. I'm lucky to be the co-founder, co-CEO of FreeWill alongside Jenny, who I will also get to see this weekend, which is very exciting. Jenny lives in Seattle, Washington. I am most often in Brooklyn, New York. Right now, I'm in sunny Palo Alto. I don't know if anyone else is down here, but it's going to hit 93 degrees today, which is a little bit wild for the end of summer. FreeWill is the #1 estate planning and plan giving solution in the US, trusted by 2,300 leading nonprofits, including our friends at the American Diabetes Association, the Red Cross, Amnesty International, the Urban League, United Way, Susan G. Komen, and more, featured in places like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, among other things as well. The FreeWill team generated almost $13 billion for charities to date, mostly in the United States, 2,300 partners, again, including many of you. We're very happy to have you here. More than half a millennium of combined fundraising experience, and we're lucky to bring some of that experience to you today. And last thing before we get started, we're so grateful you're here. We're grateful all the time for all the work you do. And so we're going to give some of my favorite books. This is, I think, a top 2 book in my life, I would say. The Overstory by Richard Powers. The other one, by the way, if you're keeping track, is A Gentleman in Moscow. So go check that out if you're ever interested in absolutely great literature. Barbara Evans says it's such a good book. Sinclair, by the way, says that her birthday is Friday. 2000s boy band music, please. So I'm gonna make a little note about 2000s boy band music for next week. You got it. Okay, we will be there with some lovely knockoffs of NSYNC, the Backstreet Boys, and my favorite 98 Degrees. Okay, so back to how good the Overstory is. If you haven't already, just make a note at the end of the session in the survey if you'd like a chance for this book. It's just awesome. It's phenomenal. It's gorgeous. It is meaningful. It has a great message, but overall, you'll just love it. The 5 hours, 6 hours it takes to read this book will make your life a lot better. Okay, how's your week going? By the way, back on the Overstory before I get off this topic, because it's so important. Like, if you read the back cover of the Overstory, I wish I had it. It's in a different room right now. How every book has, like, one author says this is a great read, whatever. The back of the Overstory is like Barack Obama says this is the one book that everyone in humanity should read. Bill Gates says X, and it's just sort of wild. So it has changed a lot of lives. All right, let's talk about how your week is going. Not a happy week. So if anyone has thoughts here, end of summer, obviously a lot going on in the U.S. political landscape, and so rise in anxiety across the board. But in the inverse, how comfortable people are about hitting their goals this year, we're actually seeing the highest rates we have seen in, more than a year, right? So you're seeing a lot of bullishness about hitting goals, a lot of donors stepping up. A lot of this is that the market continues to perform super well. So there's a lot of ties between the overall stock market and overall charitable giving, but the most optimistic we have seen all year, right? So shout out to all the hard work. We know that is not just, hope is not a strategy, right? You all have been putting in the work and hopefully starting to see that show up as well. One other note, actually, before I get started, just from housekeeping, is today's Rosh Hashanah, right? So Lishana Tova to those of you that are celebrating. It also means that a lot of people can't make it, right? And so we considered, why should we have a session today, or should we push it back to next week? And the overall take we had was that stuff is so important, and a lot of you are incorporating this into your end of year plans right now, that we are making the recording widely available for everyone to watch whenever they choose to, and knowing that some folks can't make it today. So again, just a Lishana Tova to all of our Jewish friends celebrating Rosh Hashanah today, and we will dive right in. So let's do a really quick breakdown before we get to our expert panel. What do we even mean by tax advantage gifts, right? So these are non-cash. These are gifts of assets that provide a tax benefit to donors, and the benefits actually vary by type of gift, so they're not all the same. These are often, or in many cases, almost always larger than cash donations, which makes them exceedingly important. The common types include stock giving, donor advised funds. But when we say stock, we also mean things like mutual funds, sort of publicly traded assets on an equity market, donor advised funds, qualified charitable distributions, also known as IRA gifts, cryptocurrency, less common, but you should still know about it. Sometimes things like real estate, sometimes things like private business interests, sometimes things like a share in a law firm, right? Mineral rights can be a lot more things, but those are the most common that you are most likely to actually receive this time. Why do these matter? Why are we talking about them? It's just a little bit more cumbersome than just taking a credit card. Why don't we just stick to credit cards all the time? Well, the first is that, as I just mentioned, the stock market is up 18% year over year, meaning from 12 months ago, 13% year to date. This is a very strong market year. Over the past 5 years, it has gained nearly 100%, which is a fancy way of saying it has doubled. Despite an April dip, we all remember the April dip and the tariff news and the 10% crash. And we did a whole session today of say, if there's a recession, what should we do about it? Well, that's all shifted around. The market is finishing daily at record highs. Crypto markets are also performing well. Bitcoin is up 26%. Ethereum, which is the second most common cryptocurrency, and by the way, in many years, it is the most gifted cryptocurrency to charities, more than Bitcoin. So that's an interesting fun fact for you. Economists project the market will remain steady through the end of year. Of course, nobody predicts the market. This is not tax or financial advice. Do not change your investment strategy based on this webinar. Thank you very much. But a strong market creates an ideal scenario for end of year giving. So we've seen already from Giving USA that last year was the best year on record. And unless something crazy happens, we expect that this year will be the best year on record. So very good news for all of us. Here's a little bit of a snapshot of the S&P over the last 5 years. You can see it's up 103%, ups and downs and ups and downs. And yet the sort of the moral or the arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice, and it often bends towards increasing stock market returns as well. So a better stock market, why, right? So why do we think about, you can sort of say, okay, great, stock market up, giving up, that's all I need to know. But if we dig a little bit further, you actually have this sort of era of good feeling, right? Feeling of being wealthier. You often have unanticipated wealth. People's budget actually has more money in it at the end of the year than they expected. It often is wealth that feels unearned. People are much more generous with income gains, with investment gains than they are with salary gains. An increase in capital gains tax liabilities creates an interest in avoiding those, right? So the more my stock appreciates, the more capital gains I have to pay, the more I would like to not pay that. And one avenue is to give that to charity. Second, high inflation devalues cash gifts. So inflation makes it more expensive for donors to give from their disposable income. And at the same time, cash gifts are worth less to you because costs have gone up. When donors give from their wealth instead of their wallet, nonprofits are less susceptible to an unpredictable economy. And for the most part, this sort of mental anchor point of people giving more matters a lot. Insight number 3, and this is really important, year end drives new ways of giving. So November and December are obviously the biggest months of charitable giving. Many of your donors are also wrapping up their finances at end of year. Many of them are having review sessions with their financial advisor. Year-end giving combines generosity with financial savviness. So these two things interplay in a way they might not if there's just a disaster in May and we're trying to do rapid response work. It makes this the opportune moment to highlight new ways to support your nonprofit. Right? So we're going to dive into, okay, it's a great moment, but what the heck do I actually do? And we're blessed to have a couple of really smart folks here as well. So I'm gonna shift us here for a moment and start to introduce our incredible expert panel: Desiree Hicks, Erica Sanchez, Autumn Hubbard. Welcome to the party. It's so good to have you all here. I've gotten to know you all over the years. Some folks on the call may know you extremely well and have worked with you hand in glove quite a bit, but for some of you, they might be totally new. So first, I want to talk about how great Desiree is. So Desiree is a senior partner success strategist with FreeWill. She joined in 2021, so we're coming up on 4 years. Wow. Desiree, she used to be the director of development at the ACLU of Michigan. She was an engagement officer at the Phillips Collection. She's a graduate of Howard University and the Michigan State University. She works with dozens of partners at FreeWill and oversees many more. But just a couple to name: the National Council on Aging, the City College of New York, which is one of my all-time favorites, the Alvin Ailey Dance Foundation, also an incredible one. Desiree, is there anything else you want to say by way of introduction?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. We're going to share some exciting information with you. Just want to piggyback on what Patrick said. So I have 20 plus years of fundraising experience. I'm based here in Detroit. I've worked in every aspect of fundraising that you can think of. That includes membership, grant writing, annual fund, major gifts, corporate sponsorship, and planned giving. And immediately prior to coming to FreeWill, I worked as a major gift officer at Wayne State University, which is based here in Detroit.
Amazing. And I thought people would be excited about all your experience. They're mostly excited about go Spartans and go. Is it Buffalo? Is that right, Howard? Did I get that right?
No, no,
No.
we're
What's the
bison.
Howard mascot?
We're bison.
Bison. Oof.
Bison.
All right, that's an embarrassing mistake. Well, you'll forgive me later. All right. Next, we have Autumn Hubbard. So Autumn is also a senior part of Success Strategists for Well, more than 3 years here. Used to be a senior fundraising marketing manager at Bethany Christian Services, was an annual giving officer at Grand Valley State University, also a graduate of that university. Look at that logo. For everyone, there are no colleges that have logos as good as Grand Valley State. I mean, just extraordinary. Um, Among other organizations, work with Catholic Relief Services, Feed My Starving Children, and Bethany Christian Services, which is quite convenient because she used to work there. So a lot of expertise across a lot of organizations, but particular focus on faith organizations. And so really happy to have Autumn here. Autumn, anything else that you want to add?
I would say go blue, but also shout out to all my Spartan friends. And yeah, excited to join you today. I work with a lot of our faith-based partners and also a lot of our military and veteran support groups. So shout out to Paralyzed Veterans of America and Navy Marine Corps, who I saw are in the chat.
Great. The Michigan crew is going hard, very exciting. Um, uh, Excellent. I'm working on my mascots. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate that. And Dana says that Feed My Starving Children is fantastic. Lots of love from the mitten, as they say. Lastly, but not leastly, Erica Sanchez, also senior part of Success Strategist at FreeWill. I've been here more than 3 years. Former senior development manager at American Cancer Society, has done amazing work there. Graduate of the University of Central Florida. Works with organizations like the National Pancreatic Foundation, the Native Plant Trust, and Blinded Vets Association. Erica, anything else you'd like to say by way of introduction?
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. I'm calling in from rainy Miami, Florida. I saw a couple of my partners in the chat. I'm super excited that y'all were able to join today. In addition to my background in nonprofit and American Cancer Society, I'm incredibly lucky to support missions here at FreeWill that align with a lot of my passions around animal welfare, women's empowerment, and environmental conservation. So I'm excited to bring some of the success that we've seen with those partners and talk about that today. Thank you.
Amazing. So good to have you all here. So exciting. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so you can see everybody's faces a little bit larger, and we're gonna dive right in to. We're just gonna try to. It's what time is it? It's 12:18 on the East Coast, 9:18 where I am on the West Coast. We're gonna try to get as much in as we possibly can. So we'll start with Desiree, and we're gonna talk about. We're just gonna go right to the heart of it. What is one strategy in giving season that you've seen really move the needles to inspire donors?
So I would like to share a story about one of our partners. They've had great success with smart giving in regards to their galas. So they host a series of galas in the spring and the fall. They do 6 to 8 in the spring, and then they do another 6 to 8 galas in the fall, and they take place across the country. So in all of their outreach leading up to the gala and post gala, they include information about smart giving, and they've had great success in securing DAF gifts, QCDs, and stocks, and that's worked out really well for them.
That's great. Erica, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think one of the most effective strategies, I'm going to piggyback off of Desiree, use your fall events as a launch pad to highlight non-cash giving opportunities. Events are really powerful because they bring together your most loyal supporters and major donors in one place at a moment when they're already feeling really connected to your mission. I've worked with partners who've done this really well. For example, I've seen some weave in smart giving language directly into their event programs. Others have placed postcards with QR codes on tables, or they tuck brochures into goodie bags. I think there's something really special about having that tangible reminder for folks to take home, put on their fridge or their desk where they see it every day. And also, don't forget the follow-up, right? Sending post-event emails to attendees that includes a reminder about these smarter ways to give really keeps the momentum going and makes it easier for donors to take action there.
Love that. Autumn, what do you think?
I think it's most important to align the smart giving strategies with the impact story you've already picked for your year-end appeal, right? You've probably spent a lot of time over the summer trying to really hone in on what's that key story from the year, what's going to be most impactful and share our mission. So at this point, let the story be what inspires your donors. And then just add a mention so that they know they can also make a gift via one of these smart giving methods, right? So write in your appeal, whether it's print or digital, where you say, here's where you can go to make your gift online. I would add a second sentence that says, did you know you can also make a gift via your donor advised fund, stock, QCD, crypto, etc. So definitely continue to lead with stories. That's always most impactful, and just make sure that they know there's multiple ways to make an impact.
Yeah, just to echo Autumn for a second, I mean, you can take a minute right now and think, do I have the story in mind, right? You might have 7 things you do. What if you're in an elevator with someone for 15 stories, what do you do? Why does it matter? And what kind of impact can giving have? And then what Autumn's saying is the elevation of that is if you would like to have impact, would you like to have even more impact at a lower cost, which is the reason for all of these tax advantage gifts. And so it can be really, really powerful. I mean, folks that are coming to your gala, folks that are on your list, they are trying to have the kind of impact they would like to through your organization. And this is a great way to do it. Autumn, as we head into year end, actually, before we get off that, Erica and Desiree, anything else you want to say about events, galas, any sort of specific tips? I know you shared, have a QR code, have a take home. Is there anything else that folks who are thinking about their fall galas, any last minute shifts they should be making?
Well, I would say always have the person who's speaking talk about smart giving in their remarks. So if you
Mm-hmm.
have things that you've included like on the table or at the check-in desk, make sure that the person who's speaking references that during their speech and directs people to that information so they know to look for it.
Yeah, that's great. Erica, anything you want to add?
I think Desiree said it best. I mean, peppering folks with those multiple reminders, whether it's postcards, brochures, and goodie bags, having folks follow up and mention it during the recession, I think is perfect. And then making sure that you're following up in post-event outreach and emails is key there to drive it home.
That's great. And the underlying psychology behind what Desiree is saying is people want social proof. They want to know that people like me are doing this. So if somebody is speaking about smart giving, particularly, by the way, if they used to not do it and then they change their mind and why, right? It's sort of the old conversion story. And yet it's, I used to do this and then I changed, then I found this, and it's better for all these 3 reasons. And we'll get into what those reasons are. So Desiree's point is particularly powerful here. I just want to make sure that as folks are sort of scribbling their notes, they get that down. Autumn, as we head into year end, what trends are you seeing and how donors are changing the way they give? I mean, you work with so many organizations. You're really fortunate compared to a lot of folks on the call who are just get to see their own work. And you see these sort of macro trends happening across the sector.
Yeah, so a lot of my partners report that they see their smart giving donors switch year to year, right? Maybe stock was the best gift type for them in 2023, but then in 2024, that same donor made a QCD gift. So I think that's why it's so important to consistently mention all types of non-cash gifts that you accept. Again, on your website, emails, any print pieces. Let the donor self-identify with what makes the most sense for their personal finances that year.
That's great. I think one thing just to highlight that's sort of interesting to see as we look at the math is that I know that probably 85% of the audience knows what QCDs are very well, but for the other 15%, these are something called qualified charitable distributions. Qualified charitable distribution. They are gifts out of an IRA account. For a whole bunch of reasons, you will have to pay money anytime you take anything out of your IRA, even if you pass it on to your kids after you pass away and you're below the estate tax threshold, except if you give it a charity. And once you turn 73, you have to take a portion of your IRA out every year, a specific percentage dictated by the government, and you have to pay taxes on it. The only way you get out of that process is by giving it a charity. So a lot of folks are doing that. You're eligible once you turn 70 and a half. And once you turn 73, that's when you have to get forced to take that money out. So those of you that have come to our other sessions know that there's more people turning 70 than ever before at any point in history. And so that's partly driving this. So it's really, really important. Evelina asks about the age for RMDs. It's 73. So very important. Yeah, so that's great. Desiree, back to you for a moment. If you had to prioritize one or two things that fundraisers absolutely must do in the fall to be ready for year-end giving, what would you say those are?
First of all, I would say integrations, as Autumn has mentioned earlier. You need to integrate smart giving into all your outreach. So that could be snail mail, that could be in your newsletters, that could be in your social media posts, that could be in your annual fund appeals. You need to put it everywhere because you never know which type of outreach that someone may respond to. It's also important that you have the links in key sections on your website. So of course your donate page and your ways to give page. But if you have any other pages where you experience a lot of traffic, you need to talk about smart giving on those pages as well. Of course, you'll see a lot of your gifts coming at the end of the year, but you'll also see a lot of gifts coming through your website throughout the year. And I've always said to my partners, if it's too difficult for someone to find a way to make a gift to your organization, trust me, they will go to another organization because you have to make giving as easy as possible, number one. And two, you have to be able to present your supporters with different ways to support you because you never know which one may speak to them.
That's a great point. Erica, what do you think?
Yes. One thing to prioritize this fall, make sure your website is ready for donors during this busy giving season. At FreeWill, we actually see that majority of trackable QCD and stock gifts come from donors who simply go to our partner's website and easily find the tools and information.
Did it freeze? I think she froze.
That's great. I think Erica froze for a moment. So Autumn, let's go to you if you don't mind. We'll come back to Erica.
My number one thing, if you're going to have one action item, like Desiree said, it's very common to have it up on your website, the ways to give page. But then so often in our year-end appeal, we're sending your donors to a specific donation form or landing page so that appeal can be tracked. So go check that specific donation form and landing page. Are the 4 different giving types, if you accept all 4, stocks, DAFs, QCDs, etc., is it clearly stated somewhere on that end of year specific donation form or landing page?
That's great. Erica, we lost you for just a moment, but I thought your point was super clear about having it super clear on the website. I think one thing that I'll speak for the 4 of us that breaks our little fundraising expert hearts is when we see someone put a ton of effort into a campaign and write a gorgeous email. And then you say, please do everything you can to help. And then you click on it and it says, would you like to give $25? And you think $25, like there are people here that would give you $6,000 out of their IRA today. There are people that would give you a $10,000 gift out of the donor advised fund today. And we're cramming them down into these like tiny numbers in a way that actually is worse for them, worse for you, and worse for the impact you want to make. And that's the thing that sort of makes us shed our often metaphorical, on occasion literal tears. So don't do that. Autumn, let's actually go back to this for any of you all. Are there repeatable outreach strategies that you're seeing? Like, what should I be doing right now as I think about messaging to my nonprofit audience? Desiree, can I call on you if you have any thoughts on this? If not, it's all right.
That's a good one. Say that again, Patrick, now. I'm sorry, rephrase the question again.
What kind of outreach should I be doing now to see more gifts in November and December?
Well, of course, you should start your outreach now. A lot of partners wait until October. That's when they start the end of year outreach. So, if you have your emails slated to go out, start them in October. There's a rule of thumb that we have about people need to see things 7 times before it really starts to sink in. So, I have one partner who said between now, I think, and the end of the year, they're sending 18 emails. I was like, wow, that's a lot. But within each of those emails, they're talking about smart giving. You have to remember, I always tell people the philanthropic landscape is competitive. There are a lot of people vying for these gifts from various nonprofits. What's going to make you stand out and what's going to keep you top of mind with that particular donor so that they make the gift to you. And so repetition is key. Consistency is key. You've got to let them know, yes, we accept these types of gifts. And then, when you're having one-on-one conversations, when it gets to that point, you want to emphasize how their gift has made an impact to your organization.
Yeah, I think that's great. Autumn, have you seen a particular gift type resonate more with donors this year based on what's happening in the market? Or what are you seeing overall in terms of what kind of gifts I should be asking for?
Well, I know you touched on QCDs, so obviously that is growing a lot. The other one I've heard a lot more about this year is donor advised funds or DAFs. We know there's over $240 billion sitting in DAFs waiting to be distributed to charities. So DAFs are one of the most economically resilient giving types, regardless of what their other non-cash assets or cash assets may have experienced in this past year. Again, this is money they've already set aside. So I'm seeing a lot of nonprofits try to lean into that, really make sure to consistently educate donors and ask about donor advised funds. They're also more accessible than ever. When I started out in fundraising, it was kind of a niche giving method, usually through community foundations. But now it's so easy to start one online, via Fidelity, Charles Schwab. I would say probably one of the most important takeaways or piece of advice related to DAFs is try to always use, when you're speaking with a donor, whether it's in person or in a communication, spell it out, donor advised fund, and maybe even consider giving some examples of institutions or what is a donor advised fund. I was always very surprised when I did fundraising how many people had a donor advised fund, but it's more, internal industry language and they don't often remember. So take the time to kind of spell it out for them and provide some examples.
Yeah, I think this is a really important point. Just one anecdote I want to say is a lot of organizations say, what do you mean someone might not know if they have a donor advised fund? How is that possible? And yet, what happens is a financial advisor normally opens the donor advised fund for someone, particularly if they have one, right? It's the most common way by an enormous amount of how a donor advised fund gets opened. The financial advisor says, hey, you have a lot of appreciated assets. Would you like to think about this? I can set one up for you. And they say, sure. In the same way that you might not know, hey, do you have any investments in oil futures? You might be like, I don't really know. I try not to think about this too much, right? And so reminding folks about donor advised funds is really important. And the fact that we're talking about it here to a group of professional fundraisers, and it's sometimes new to you all, is a reminder that it's also new to all these donors who have other jobs and don't think about this all the time. So it can be incredibly, incredibly important.
Patrick, I would like to
Yes,
ask something. I want to piggyback
please.
on what Autumn said about DAFs. So I recently read an article talking about how a lot of people do not have a beneficiary on their DAFs. So when they pass
Mm-hmm.
away, that money stays with that particular institution. So when you're having conversations with your donors and they indicate that they have a DAF, might want to say, do you have a beneficiary on your DAF? Because if so, then
Mm-hmm.
they can designate your nonprofit as one if they don't have one. Because then, like Autumn said, that money is sitting there, they pass away, they don't have a beneficiary, it stays with that particular institution.
That's so important. I think that's one of two things you have to remind. Once you find out someone has a DAF, it's great. Hey, one of my favorite phrases is, a lot of people don't know this, but I'm sure you thought about it, right? So I'm sure, you like other people, they're not that smart, but you are smart. You probably thought about it just in case, right? Do you have a beneficiary? Oh, you don't? Oh, we can talk about that, right? The other sort of just in case is that for those folks who have donor advised funds and are still employed, right? So you have this sort of narrow band of folks in their 50s and 60s that tend to may have them and still have jobs. A lot of people forget that the many times these are eligible for matching funds. Now, it all dependent on the employer, but in many cases it is. Money into donor advised funds typically is not eligible. It is often the case that grants out of donor advised funds are eligible for matching funds. So don't forget about that either. If you're doing a $5,000 gift and maybe you have a $5,000 match, I mean, really sort of exciting stuff. So Desiree, great point. Thank you for bringing that up. Desiree, we're going to stick on you for a moment if you don't mind. Can you share an example of an instance where a donor gave out of appreciated assets and what that looked like for the donor and for the organization?
Sure. So one of our partners received a $1 million stock gift through their Smart Giving landing page. One of our favorite partners, well, all of our partners are our favorite partners. Anyway, this gift was given by an alum to create a scholarship to help students offset the costs associated with pursuing their college degree. The other great thing that this partner does is that they tell their gift officers to actively talk about smart giving in their conversations, to let their donors know that they accept these types of gifts. And if the donor agrees to give an appreciated stock gift or a DAF or a QCD or even a crypto gift, they direct them to their Smart Giving landing page so that they make the gift through that particular tool. And so that's worked out very well for them.
I mean, that's incredible, right? So these $1 million gifts don't just happen. We have to remind folks of it. I recall a while back when we were thinking originally about working more in stock giving. One of the things I remember most is that someone in higher ed said, "I've seen repeatedly buildings built with a single gift of stock." Right? It's that these gifts are so much larger than everything else, and so really amazing, great insight there. Um, Erica, what's one challenge you see that nonprofits face in securing these gifts, and how might you actually overcome those challenges?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges I see is lack of confidence in communicating non-cash giving with donors one-on-one. I know it can be really intimidating if you've never had those conversations before, but the truth is, if you or anyone on your team who interacts with donors isn't comfortable discussing these giving options, it's going to be really difficult to normalize the conversation. And if it's not normalized, some of those gifts might not happen. So that's why I think staff training is so important, especially ahead of donor cultivation events. Anyone having one-on-one conversations with supporters should at least have that foundational knowledge of non-cash giving and be able to articulate some of the donor benefits. The goal isn't to turn everyone into a financial expert by any stretch of the imagination, but it's to plant the seed and make smart giving a natural part of your organization's giving culture. I will say just a couple of recommendations for folks who may not be a FreeWill partner yet and don't have access to our partner exclusive trainings. First, I recommend following our Tuesday webinar series because we cover this topic pretty frequently. And second, leverage AI like our tool Willy, which we'll drop in the chat so y'all can take a peek at that. But you can create talking points for non-cash giving for you and your staff. And then once you do that, you can start carving out time internally to walk through the basics, role play common scenarios, and then just build comfort in saying those words out loud with folks, especially ahead of your end.
Yeah, great. Really great points. One thing I want to address actually is there was a question, I think, from Ellen Soto in the chat. Thank you, Ellen, for saying this because some other folks agreed with you on this. I'm trying to pull it back up as it comes in. Can you talk about ways to encourage donors not to send their gifts from DAFs, QCDs, et cetera, as anonymous gifts? We can keep them confidential, but we need to know the source of the gift for our records. So, Ellen, this is a fascinating topic because what's happening is when we talk to nonprofits like yours, we hear that 25, 30% of these gifts are anonymous. When we go talk to Fidelity and say, hey, what's up? What's going on here? They say, oh no, to only 3% of organizations, only 3% of donors want to remain anonymous. Everybody wants to hear from you. And by the way, that gift might be the biggest gift they've ever given. And if they don't hear from you, that's a bad look on your organization. So what do you do? How do you sort of get unstuck here? To Erica's point and Deserne's point about having this on your website and having that be the portal through which they give is incredibly important. You can sort of gather their information, say what kind of gift you want to make, and then direct them to the right place. And so that avoids this risk of, if I give you a $10,000 gift and I've only, excuse me, because I've only, given cash previously, but now I have a donor advised fund and now I can be sort of more muscular in my giving. And then I hear nothing. Well, I'll probably redirect my giving next time to another nonprofit. If anything, or maybe even just pull back from the sector a little bit because that's such a negative experience. So this work becomes so important, right? And you never know if someone gives you $10,000 first gift, there's probably a $50,000 second gift and maybe something further down the line. And so this is a key mistake that's happening and something that needs to be addressed. Autumn, did you have an example also of a key non-cash gift to share?
Yeah, so I have a partner who is in the quiet phase of their capital campaign, looking to do some new buildings on campus. And they got a six-figure stock gift as one of their lead donor gifts. I think what was also great about this gift is it came from an internal champion and leader. So now that person is going to be even more comfortable talking about non-cash giving when they're also going out and making asks when it reaches the public face. So I think important reminder there, don't forget if you are working with maybe a board member or another internal champion to get some of those lead gifts for capital campaigns or other designated funds, use that as a safe way to practice talking about stock giving, right? These are your most loyal individuals, and that can pave the way to be used as an example for larger donor communications about here's what one individual was able to do.
Yeah, I love that. And then Autumn, you've also been thinking about the big barriers and how to overcome them. Anything you want to share there?
Yeah, I mean, just exactly what Erica said. I think sometimes as fundraisers, we tend to psych ourselves out over asking for these kinds of gifts. One thing I would say, if you are a faith-based nonprofit, we did just wrap up a great series with Dr. Russell James based on his book, The Biblical Fundraiser. So if you are looking for specific ways to tap into your donors' faith motivations for giving back, all of those are recorded as well, and he gives some really tangible ways to bring it up in conversation and tie that back into giving.
That's great. Um, Autumn, I'm going to stay with you on one more question. But if you have a donor who just hasn't really heard of this, right? They say, "Oh, I give $100 every year. I don't really know about that." Like, what are some of the words you use? How do you approach that conversation?
Yeah. I personally, I like to do kind of like a two-part method. I like to do one, frame it as an overall organization update, make it seem like something really exciting, right? You're giving updates on
Hmm.
your mission, your programming, and include it as an update. We now have the ability to accept gifts of stock, qualified charitable distributions, etc. I know a lot of donors are really excited about this. It's made a huge difference in how we approach, fill in your mission there. The other kind of type of wording I like to use is that social proof element that we've referenced, saying, "Hey, I was talking to a donor last week. They're choosing to give a gift of stock, um, so that they can make a larger impact." I think things like if you are a FreeWill partner, leaning into the marketing library, leaning into directing them back to your website so that that crystal clear language is provided.
That's great. Um, Erica, we sometimes hear fundraisers worry that non-cash gifts are only for the wealthy,
Mm.
right? Which we have found in our research isn't true, but how broad is the potential for things like QCDs or stock gifts or donor advised funds?
Yeah, the timing of this question is perfect because I have a recent example that's really stuck with me. I met with a grassroots organization a couple of weeks ago that received a $25,000 stock gift from a supporter who had never been on the radar as a major donor prospect. In fact, the partner happened to do some live research during our meeting, and we found out that the donor had only ever given about $100 here and there in the past few years. So we kind of like sat there and we said, okay, what made the difference? Let's look at what we've done throughout the year. First, this nonprofit had been consistently sending outreach and educating their entire audience on non-cash giving throughout the year, not just during year end, right? That's a given. Number two, they have been integrating a simple postscript about non-cash giving at the bottom of every single monthly e-newsletter this year. And that goes out to their entire supporter base. And then three, they wove it into a land acquisition campaign over the summer. And we believe this is what prompted that gift. So by normalizing and repeating the message, they planted the seed, it paid off. So I would say really key takeaway is one of the biggest mistakes that we can make is assuming which donors are or aren't willing to give in these ways. And if that organization had only targeted a small group that they believe might be interested in these methods of giving, they likely would have missed out on that $25,000 gift entirely. So when you make non-cash giving visible and accessible to everyone, you'll often be pretty surprised by who steps forward.
Eric, I think this is such a good point. This is the number one mistake I think we see organizations make, either on plan giving, which we're not talking about today, or in smart giving. It's really narrowing the circle when in fact it shouldn't be. So just as a quick thought experiment, on plan giving, every single person needs a will and almost everyone has some assets in terms of your donor base. In the smart giving, right, there's a sort of absolutely wild stat I heard the other day, which will feature prominently in the talk in Tacoma. So please act surprised if you're going to hear it that way. That 40 to 50% of all wealth in the United States is held by people over 70, right? 40 to 50%. And by the way, that is not income because those people are not working. Where it all sits in investments and it sits in stocks. Some of those stocks have moved into donor advised funds. Many of those people, if not a super majority, used to have IRAs and now have, used to have 401ks that moved into IRAs as they retire. So this is near ubiquitous. not among the entire US population, but it's among the people that are actually donating to your charity. And so, my sense is that over time, you're going to see a majority of giving move in this direction, but the opportunities are open more and more, right? A massive stock market, a enormous number of people turning 70, the rise of donor advised funds, all of these factors are the wind at your back in order to have this type of giving. Desiree, have you seen organizations successfully integrate this tax smart giving into their normal sort of run-of-the-mill cash without taking away from cash giving? Because I know that some people get that fear of the paradox of choice.
So one of our partners includes smart giving in all of their outreach. It's standard practice. So they really push it more so during the end of year, but they do it all year. And it's usually through a postscript. And oftentimes they do it with a match. So they secure a match from a donor prior to and say, hey, we have a $25,000 match or a $50,000 match. And if you give from your DAF or your QCD or stock, it also qualifies for this match. And so that's worked very well for them. And they, like I said, they do it all year.
Yeah, it's really, really smart. I mean, it's not worth just asking for cash. It's frankly, you're just never going to hit your goals that way. And I think it's just a mistake. Out there, we've got a bunch of questions from the audience, so I'm going to put them out there, and then anyone can hop in and we'll figure out among the four of us who takes it. Elizabeth says, what do you advise for a small statewide organization that doesn't have the means to take in gifts of crypto directly? So one of the things that at least we've set up in the Smart Giving Suite is really interesting. It's basically that the tools immediately liquidate the crypto and just send you normal US dollars. So that can be sort of quite normal. You often want a partner who can liquidate it for you as a way to take crypto gifts. We know a lot of people feel a little bit uncomfortable around it, or there's a bunch of practices you want to have in place. What we call KYC AML, right? So know your customer, anti-money laundering issues with crypto. So having actually someone else as a pass-through can really take a lot of work off your plate. It will get the donor the tax receipt they need, but also not have to worry with some of the compliance issues if you're a smaller organization. So it's a good, this is a great question. Teresa Joe says, we rotate our annual gala between the United States and the United Kingdom. What is a good strategy to engage former US attendees this year? And I assume that this year it means it's in the UK. Anyone have ideas on that? Well, one thing is this might be, go ahead, Autumn.
I was going to say that would be a great time to do a designated email like Desiree has brought up before, right? These are past donors, maybe add a fun theme to it. Can't meet us in London or wherever the fun city of choice is. Here's how you can still participate.
Yeah, that's great. Someone asks, can we share an example of a donation page that does a good job incorporating smart giving options? And Autumn actually shared her example in the chat from Catholic Relief Services. So you might scroll up a dozen messages or so. Click on that, go check that out. Autumn, that was a great share. And we're gonna do one or two more questions here. Jody says, is it true that with tax changes, this could be the last year to get tax advantages from opening DAFs? No, that is totally false. So we have studied the recent tax changes that passed in July. There are some shifts in how deductibility works. You have to give above a certain amount if you are a itemizing taxpayer. What will that mean? It will mean more larger gifts, maybe occasionally giving one out of every 2 years, but giving twice as much. We also think it's going to spur donor advised funds even more because people are going to put a whole bunch of money 1 year in a donor advised fund, take that big tax deduction, and then over the course of 3 years, sort of start to dole that money out, right? So that will be a really big question. All right. Does anyone have either in among the four of us or in the audience? Does anyone have? Where's this question? Can you? Oh, this is from Alexa. Can you suggest language for how to ask donors tactfully if they know they have a DAF? Our DAF gifts are by far the largest source of increased donations in dollars and money amount. So how do we find out who has a donor advised fund? What is a tactful way to do that?
I think you bring up the subject that you accept DAF gifts, and you can just say, we recently started accepting DAFs, and ask directly. When I was a fundraiser, I would always ask directly, do you happen to have a DAF? Is it a gift that you would consider making to us, to help us with such and such product? Such and such project, I'm sorry. My thing is, if you don't ask, you don't know. And so I
That's
always
right.
believe in being direct, but first of all, talk about DAFs and say, this is a way that these are the types of gifts that we accept. Would you consider making this type of gift if you happen to have a DAF?
I think that's a great point. That's a great thing in one-on-one conversations. You can use language like we're seeing a lot of folks give out of DAFs. If that's something you have, I'd be happy to walk you through. I'd be happy to walk you through a couple of those options, right? So that's an avenue as well. You can think about doing that as well.
Can I add one thing there as well?
Sure.
If you are a church or another house of worship who's joining us today, I'm seeing more and more churches do financial education seminars for their congregations. That can be a great time to talk about all of these types of giving, tie it into the Christian call to be joyful givers, to give back, as well as lots of religions have that as a value as well. So yeah, that's one way to bring it up as well.
Right. And one other thing I'll say is that, you never have to do an education campaign to tell people you accept PayPal or you accept Venmo or you expect American Express, right? The way you do this is every time you ask, you are already asking for money. You just have it as an option as you give. And so then, someone who's going in and say, okay, oh, right, I have a donor advised fund. Let me go use that to give these much larger gifts rather than a $65 gift. Desiree, I'm sorry, were you about to say something?
Oh, no, I was just agreeing.
Okay.
I did want to just piggyback off of Autumn's point really quickly that I've also had some partners that have reached out to local financial planners or advisors and kind of created that relationship and invited them to come, whether it's a virtual webinar or in person, to speak with folks about these different methods of giving, and kind of provides that expertise that maybe you or your staff aren't 100% comfortable communicating with your audience. So that was a good point.
Amazing. Erica, Autumn, Desiree, we're about to wrap up. Is there any sort of final advice you wanted to give that you weren't able to share so far?
I think we've all talked about how consistency is key. You have to make sure that your donors know that you accept these types of gifts. So my biggest recommendation, if anyone has given you a stock gift before, a QCD or a DAF gift, ask them again, either through an email or through a one-to-one conversation. And if you are able to track when they gave you that gift, it can be during their anniversary time. Like, you gave this gift to us in June of last year, please consider giving us this type of gift again. Make sure to talk about the impact of their gift, what a difference it made to your organization, and why it was so important and why you need their support. And we also know that those who have given those types of gifts before are likely to give the same type of gifts, if not more, if they know the impact of their gift, if they've been properly stewarded over that past year, which is very important, and if they're asked again. My biggest thing I tell people, if you don't ask, you don't know. So you have to put it out there and let the donor make the decision that, yes, I'm going to support this organization again. So the key thing is consistency, if nothing else.
Love that.
And I'm going to add as well, so consistency, get started now. And I know you're all probably already planning for 2026, as wild as that sounds. So start thinking about educating early, right? If you waited until this webinar to get started for year end, let's get started earlier. A really good time to do education can be around tax season. People have usually just submitted their taxes. They're thinking about what they want to do differently for next year, or summertime. That tends to be a slower time for appeals, so a good time for education. But when we looked at all of the data from our smart giving partners, there's pretty much a 1-to-1 ratio of those who did education prior to year end, seeing 100% increase in the smart gifts received during year end. So start early.
Amazing.
And hopefully you can hear me because my connection keeps going in and out, but your website, make sure it's crystal clear on how to give in these ways. Just a quick tip, anytime I used to move content around as a previous fundraiser, I would test it out and ask someone completely unrelated to the work. It was, my friend, my partner, my mom, pretend they were a donor, in this case, looking for ways to give. If it took them longer than 15 seconds to find that information on my website, I knew it wasn't intuitive enough. So make sure that's easy to find right now before year-end giving kicks off. And that's it.
Amazing, Erica. I love that 15-second rule. All right, we're going to wrap up with a couple of quick housekeeping announcements. Hope you all can see this. But first of all, if folks wouldn't mind joining me in the chat and thanking Erica, Desiree, and Autumn, this was really awesome. I learned a couple of things. I hope that you did as well. Wrapping up, we are dropping a link in the chat for a survey. Tell us, was this helpful? Any feedback you have. Also, if you would like a copy of The Overstory by Richard Powers, we're going to send this to 20 people as a gift. Again, won the Pulitzer Prize. Can't speak highly enough of this book. It will make your life more enjoyable. Second thing, we are sending out a toolkit around with a lot of these best practices: stocks, QCDs, donor advised funds, crypto. In the follow-up email, just make sure to fill out the survey so you can do that. We'll send you a link to this so you have it. You can also, by the way, if you're interested in some of the FreeWill tools, including around smart giving, you can actually, if you say yes in the survey to a one-on-one meeting, it will take you directly to a scheduling portal. So you can say, let's talk at Thursday at 12:30 or whatever it may be. So making that as easy as possible for you. Our next session, if you're interested in end of year, you really want to get this rolling by October 17th. So making a note there as well. And then last thing, our next session is October 7th at noon. We're going to talk about how do we thoughtfully use AI as part of our year-end giving strategy to further increase our ability to nail our goals. So we'd love to have you there. Feel free to, if you fill out this survey, we will make sure you get an invite to that one as well. As usual, if you need anything at all, or if you want to connect on LinkedIn, I'm Patrick at freewill.com, or I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn. See, hopefully many of you on Friday in Washington State, but looking forward to seeing many of you in Indianapolis at CGP in, I think, late October, as well as a fun conference I'm going to in Baltimore in October as well about grant giving. So that is it. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Desiree. Thank you, Autumn. Thank you, everybody who joined us in particular. We know that you are incredibly busy, and being able to come here and sort of move your career forward, move your organization forward among all the other things you'd have to do, just really means a lot to us. So thank you again, and talk to you all soon.